Now we're going to use what we've learned so far to both sketch and identify the graphs of quadratic equations. So we're looking on page 39 of the notes. We just have 2 more pages of this to do and then we're going to move on to a different topic. So a quick reminder of what we know when we see a quadratic equation. First of all, we look at the sign of the x squared, and if that's positive, then we have a U-shaped graph, and if it's negative, we have an N-shaped graph. Okay, a few other things that we might want to know. The constant term tells us where it cuts the x or the y-axis. Okay, so this is the y-intercept. So in this case, we know that the graph of this quadratic equation is going to intercept the y-axis at 0, 6. The next piece of information we have comes from the roots of the graph. So if you factorize it or use the minus b formula, you can find the roots of the graph, and that's where this graph will intersect the x-axis. So we have our roots there. Now, we've also talked about the discriminant and the fact that in some cases we might just have one root, in which case the graph will just touch the x-axis at one point, and we might have a negative discriminant, a minus sign under the square root, in which case it's not going to intercept the x-axis at all. So this is where we have a negative discriminant. And the reason we went through completing the square and finding the minimum point is because when we have a negative discriminant, we have no roots, but we can still sketch the graph by finding the minimum point. Okay, so with all that information, let's take a look at a graph of a quadratic equation like this. So the first piece of information is that the x squared is negative, so we know it's going to be N-shaped. Now, N-shaped graphs always have roots. So we should always, because they're always going to intercept the x-axis at some point, so we should always be able to solve these. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is find out where the roots are. Well, we know that it's going to intercept, so we know it's N-shaped, and we know that it intercepts the y-axis at y equal to minus 12. So those are 2 pieces of information. And the third piece of information will come from finding the roots. Now it turns out that when you find the roots of this equation, they'll always be the same as the roots of the positive graph with all of the signs changed. So I can factorize this. Can I? Looking for something that adds to give me minus 7 and multiplies to give me plus 12. So we know that they have the same sign and they're both minus. X minus 3 and x minus 4. You can use the minus b formula if you prefer. So we get x equals 3 and x equals 4 to be our roots, which means we can now sketch the graph of this equation. It's N-shaped, it goes through the y-axis at minus 12, and it goes through the x-axis at 3 and 4. So we want most of our graph above the line like this. We also know that it's symmetrical. So we could find the maximum point by completing the square or subbing in x equals 3.5 because the maximum point is going to be between 3 and 4. Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So minus 12, minus 10, minus 8, minus 6, minus 4, minus 2. There's my graph there. Let me give a bit more space on the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we fill in the pieces of information that we have here. So we know it goes through the x-axis at 3 and 4. And we know it goes through the y-axis at minus 12. be aware you don't want to spend a lot of time on this, because when you're told to sketch a graph, they're only going to give you usually around 5 marks for questions like this. Okay, so I know that my turning point is going to be between these two, and I'm not even bothering to find it, and you can if you want, but like I said, it's a sketch the graph question. So it'll be N-shaped, going through 3 and 4, and it should be symmetrical as well. Okay, that's not the neatest graph in the world. It's pretty much what we're looking for. So the important thing is that you have a smooth curve, not an upside down V shape. So there's the graph that we were asked to there. So most of the marks will go for even, writing down those 3 points there when you're asked to sketch the graph of this. Okay, so I'll pause there, or I'll stop there, and we'll do a second video for the next page of notes.